Hey everyone, Nathan Masters here. I couldn't wait to do the story you're about to see because it reminds you how scrappy early Hollywood really was. Hollywood's oldest surviving movie studio started out as a horse barn, and today it's hiding in plain sight in a parking lot. That's where we're headed.
Hi,
Angie, hi. So excited to be here at the barn.
Welcome to the barn.
This barn is about as close as you can get to the birth of Hollywood as we know it.
Right? I mean, the barn is our main artifact. You know, even though we're up here in our archives right now, I always tell everybody, this barn tells us several different stories. And it now, sadly, is the oldest structure still standing in Hollywood.
At the turn of the 20th century, Hollywood was about as far from Tinseltown as you could get. Founded in 1887 by an ardent prohibitionist and a devout Episcopalian, it began as a country hamlet of lemon groves and horse barns in what was then known as the Cahuenga Valley, a community that abhorred gambling, liquor, and popular entertainment. Wealthy migrants planted orchards and sumptuous gardens around baronial mansions, drawn by the prospect of a refined ranching life in an idyllic California retreat. The most celebrated of these estates belonged to painter Paul de Longpre, whose rose gardens drew sightseers to Hollywood long before movie stars ever did. And among those early tourists was filmmaker D.W. Griffith, who in 1910 quietly shot the first motion picture ever made in Hollywood, right there in de Longpre's garden. The community that looked down on popular entertainment was already losing the argument. 3 years later, another filmmaker would arrive, and Hollywood would never be quite the same ever again.
You have some amazing photographs here. This is not what people picture as Hollywood today.
It wasn't part of Los Angeles City yet. We were kind of part of what was called the Cahuenga Valley. We had the Cahuenga Lemon Exchange. In fact, that's what this barn was really kind of utilized for, was part of the groves.
Yeah, that's around, what, 1910? Mm-hmm. And now let's fast forward 3 years, 3.5 years or something like that. And this barn comes into the picture, and also a man named Cecil B. DeMille.
The Squaw man really kind of took interest to Cecil B. DeMille and Jesse Lasky and Samuel Goldfish because it was the top play at the time.
Yeah. The play was actually adapted into a novel.
So why not
Again,
make it
it's
a
what you
successful
call
movie?
like hot IP. If like there's a best-selling book.
They wanted it to be a full-length feature, meaning it was gonna be, you know, at least 50 minutes. It's not gonna be these little shorts, which is, again, very experimental because could you get people to sit in a theater? Here's a letter pertaining to an actress by the name of Red Wing. The Squaw Man was a story of Native Americans, and Red Wing was one of our earliest of the Native American actresses. This was them bringing Red Wing here and being part of that film as well.
So this letter documents basically her hiring then?
Yep.
And it's just written to Sam Goldfish.
Yeah,
So Sam Goldfish, well, that was his name, right? And then signed by DeMille here in pencil.
Exactly.
Wow.
They decided that the East Coast was just not gonna be a place to film this. So what they did is decide to move west. Cecil B. DeMille got into a train, went to Flagstaff, Arizona, December 1913, and realized it wasn't the climate. It was cold, it was damp, it was rainy, and got right back on the train and went far west as it could, which was Los Angeles. And then what he did was he stayed at the Alexandria Hotel. So what he ended up doing was sending a telegram back to Jesse Lasky and Goldfish out in New York and said, I'm gonna rent this barn. And we have what rarely ever comes out on display is the original lease agreements.
Oh, wow, for this barn. Wow.
At the time, the property was owned by a gentleman by the name of Jacob Stern. And he was an up-and-coming real estate, and he had a beautiful mansion that sat right across the street from the barn off of Selma and Vine.
I think I've seen a picture of that.
Yeah.
You have a picture of that over there, right there, postcard.
Yep, gardens
Actually,
too.
not just a picture, a postcard. So Hollywood already had this tourism industry, and then it was homes and gardens.
Yeah. And then you have L.L. Burns and Revere. Those were the two gentlemen that were also leasing the barn to be a developing lab. Would later on become start the Western Costume Company that we're familiar with too.
So DeMille was almost he was a subletter in some ways. So this is interesting. It's entered into the 24th day of December. It's Christmas Eve, 1913.
And then on the back, yeah, we have here signing for Jesse L. Lasky Feature Play Company is Cecil B. DeMille, General Manager, Lasky.
So that's probably one of his earliest autographs.
This is pretty close to a document of the birth of Hollywood.
Yes.
Certainly the birth of what we know as Paramount today.
Yes, and those copies are actually Jacob Stern's personal copies. And then Cecil B. DeMille's collection is actually at BYU. So there's just the 2 sets of copies. And we have different revisions because, at first it was just a couple-month lease. It's all Jesse L. Lasky gave him approval for. But then they were able to expand just on that Selma and Vine lot and make stages and eventually almost kind of add like glass house effects where they can film finally inside and have the lights because they just didn't have the lighting technology. So even an indoor scene was filmed outside.
Now, of course, they didn't need Soundstages.
No.
Because there was no sound.
Exactly. Enter 1916, where we partner with another gentleman by the name of Adolf Zucker, and they want to bring in more of these full-length featured films, which is hard to get distribution at the time because people were used to the shorts.
Right.
And that's where Paramount comes in. They needed to also have control and start having their own distribution, so they acquire Paramount Pictures.
So this is the original Paramount lot.
Yes, on
which
Salmon Vine.
Actually grew out of the Stern Ranch.
Yep, exactly. Adolf Zucker had a lot of the big actresses. He had somebody by the name of Mary Pickford.
Oh, okay.
I love this photo. This is actually her with the barn in the background. And this is on the Salmon Vine,
So when Paramount moved, the barn moved too.
Yes.
Now that wasn't its final move though, because the barn is not. We're not on the Paramount lot right now.
No.
We're across from the Hollywood Bowl.
No, there's another move in there. A couple moves in there actually.
Wow.
Even moved a few times on the lot. But when it was on the lot, probably the longest of its life was a Paramount gym. It got moved, but that's because there was another preservation save in the meantime, which was in 1956. Cecil B. DeMille had gotten word that he thought the barn might be demolished back then. So what they did is they worked with people like John Anson Ford, and they were able to make this a California landmark. And it was the first entertainment-related anything to get landmark status. Wow. So that was the big save. And moved the barn out of the Paramount lot, and it sat across the street from Capitol Records for several years.
Wow.
And people still today remember driving by and just seeing this barn that's just falling in disrepair, just sitting in a parking lot. And then that's where Hollywood Heritage comes. It was formed by 5 women who in 1978 where they're like, there's no preservation in Hollywood. And one of those ladies, Marion Gibbons, she got wind that Universal Studios might acquire the barn. And she's like, you can't take a Paramount structure and give it to Universal. So that's when they're like, this is going to be one of our very first big saves. So John Anson Ford, the ladies went to him.
He was a county supervisor?
Yeah, help us. And he knew about this property here across from the Hollywood Bowl because there was actually supposed to be a museum here in the 60s. And by eminent domain, a lot of the homes were removed and demolished. So it was always earmarked to have a museum here. So we could tell early Hollywood agricultural story all the way to where Hollywood as entertainment started from this little barn.
Just from this one structure?
Yes.
Wow. Well, I'm so glad it's been saved multiple times now.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here. Like, subscribe, and stay connected.